Time now for Fantasy Football Today for CBS Local. I'm Jamie Eisenberg. That's Dave Richard. That's Heath Cummings. We have the starts and sits you need for week number 1 to help you win your fantasy leagues. Let's start with the guy who hopefully is going to have a big game. That's the start of the week here on CBS Sports. It's Raheem Mostert, 49ers running back, headed for what I hope is going to be a monster start to his season and a monster week 1 against the Detroit Lions defense. They stink. The 49ers definitely going to run the ball. Last year when they were bad, they averaged nearly 25 carries a game for their running backs alone. Mostert will be the lead guy. I like Trey Sermon as a potential sleeper, but I think Mostert's in line for a huge game. The rest of my starting options for this week, you see Ryan Tannehill, Miles Sanders, James White, Robbie Anderson, and Laviska Shenault. I like those two receivers in a big, big way. Anderson, revenge game against the Jets. Shenault taking on that terrible Texans defense. I think both those guys have a chance to go off. Dave, let's take a look at your starts here. You got Jalen Hurts, Juju Smith-Schuster, Chase Edmonds, Tyler Boyd, and Marquise Brown. Tell me about Juju and Marquise Brown, the two AFC North wide receivers.
So with Juju, he's going up against Buffalo. This is a team that loves to keep offenses in front of them when they play defensively. Lots of underneath stuff, should be wide open. Juju had a touchdown against the Bills last year. I think he's going to see a lot of targets in this game. I think he's going to be really good in PPR. And Marquise Brown's going up against the Raiders. That should be enough. This Las Vegas defense isn't very good, but look at the track record of Baltimore in week 1. They have torched their opponents. Lamar Jackson's had big games, and this is the number 1 receiver for Baltimore.
Marquise Brown has 45 combined PPR points in his last 2 season opening games. So let's go. 3 straight games of over 100 yards receiving would be great to see on Monday night. Heath, let's take a look at your starts here for week number 1. You got a pair of running backs in DeAndre Swift and Mike Davis, Adam Thielen, Marcus Callaway, and one of your favorite tight end plays, Austin Hooper, taking on the Chiefs. So Swift is very polarizing, gets that 49ers defense. He's healthy. That's a good sign, but the matchup isn't easy. Mike Davis, new team, hopefully good situation as well, taking on Philadelphia.
Yeah, I'm just not, at this point, going to worry too much about the matchup for DeAndre Swift, because I think with Anthony Lynn calling the plays, he's going to be as involved, if not more involved, in the passing game than he is in the running game. The Lions lost their last 4 games last year by a combined 70 points. He averaged 15.5 PPR points per game in those games. As for Mike Davis, I think this is one of the few opportunities he'll have at home as a favorite. There should be plenty of run volume for Davis, and he really has little competition. Wayne Gallman's only been on the team for about a week.
All right, so you were last to give your starts. You're first to give your sits. Let's take a look at the guys that you're avoiding for week number 1. And it's a fun list of names here. When you got Trevor Lawrence, Trey Sermon, Kenny Golladay, Cortland Sutton, and Jonnu Smith. Heath, when you look at Sutton, borderline starting fantasy option for a lot of people, but you don't necessarily love the matchup against the Giants. And then also talk to us about Jonnu here, because a lot of very popular tight end sleeper and maybe a tight end starter for this week.
Yeah, with Sutton, I would just like to see a full, real NFL game coming back from that major injury last year. Also, I do think this Giants defense, especially on the outside, is pretty good. I think the Broncos will have more success passing against them over the middle with guys like Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Noah Fant. As for Jonnu Smith, I'm just not 100% sure he's even the starting tight end. I mean, he's a starting tight end. I'm not sure he's the best pass-catching tight end on his own team. I want to see the target distribution between him and Hunter Henry before I start either of them.
Yep. Unfortunately, a lot of people may be stuck starting Jonnu Smith, so hopefully he does deliver. But I certainly share your sentiment that we'd like to see him do something first before necessarily buying in completely as a must-play at the position. Dave, it's a lot of big-name guys on this list as well. You got Kareem Hunt and Josh Jacobs at the running back position, Allen Robinson, Chase Claypool, and Odell Beckham at the wide receiver position. I want to ask you about the 2 Browns players in particular, because they could be chasing points. We know Kareem Hunt in the passing game, Beckham coming back after the ACL tear, but you're a little bit concerned about both of those guys.
I need Beckham to show me first before I lock him in as a must-start fantasy receiver. If you want to use him or Hunt as flex options, that's fine, but last year, career low in catch rate from Baker Mayfield. Didn't really he's had 2 100-yard games since joining the Browns. That's a span of 23 games. And I think this Kansas City defense isn't that bad. And I know that the Browns offense would love to run the football with both of their running backs. They averaged 31 pass attempts per game last year. So I'm a little bit nervous about trusting Odell. And as for Kareem Hunt, he's always been a touchdown or bust type of property in fantasy. At least last year he was. Did have a touchdown in 9 of 12 games with Nick Chubb. I think he's going to have to score and get you around 50 or 60 total yards to come through. And I just don't know if I can count on him to do it each week. So flex at best.
Yeah, I think flex is best, probably the best thing. But I do like his setup for this game, because we did see the Chiefs struggle with pass-catching running backs last year. He did score against them in the playoff loss when Nick Chubb was healthy and playing. Actually doing a good job in the passing game in terms of Nick Chubb. So I like Hunt a little bit more probably than in PPR as maybe a borderline starter, but I think most people probably prefer to start him as a flex in that game. For me, the sits are a couple big-name running backs, David Montgomery and Saquon Barkley, along with Justin Herbert, Jamar Chase, and Noah Fant. You see Montgomery and Barkley on this list. I doubt most people are going to sit them. Hard to sit two guys that you drafted very high in your fantasy drafts, but we don't know what level Barkley will be out there, to what extent he'll be at 100%. And if the game does get maybe a little bit out of control for the Giants, do they pull him back and maybe be a little bit concerned because they play the Washington football team in week 2 on Thursday night? For Montgomery, he played the Rams last season, week 7. Struggled in that matchup. Had 5 catches in that game, but did not do much with it. 14 carries in that game, did not do much with it. This Rams defense is legit. I think Montgomery's going to struggle. So again, you're probably not sitting those guys, but maybe dial back the expectations, and probably 2 guys you want to avoid if you are playing them in DFS for week number 1. So there's your starts and sits for week 1 for Fantasy Football Today for CBS Local. Don't forget to check out our Fantasy Football Today podcast. You can find it wherever podcasts are available. And check us out, CBS Sports HQ. We're live every day at noon Eastern.